They called her Wolfless, for 7 years. Then her own father sold her death to the crown. She killed 6 royal hunters barehanded. The Alphaking watched from the gallery. He did not blink. In a kingdom where pack alphas trade daughters like coin, an ancient order has poisoned her bloodline for 200 years. They call it cleansing. They kill only in the light. He reached for her shoulder. She flinched. He swore on his mother's grave he would never touch her again without asking. She held out her hand, palm up, a false royal seal, an ambush on the mountain road, a throat cut in a washroom, a silver coin warm against her skin, the throne hall silent, wolves howling beyond the walls. A baker who served 3 kings, smiling as he confessed, "In the Iron Crown I decide what people are, then you are a fool, Majesty." The iron collar had rust on it, old rust. Someone else's blood dried into the metal so long ago it had become part of the metal. The girl wearing it was 19 years old. Her name was Leora Vane. They called her Wolfless 7 years. That was how long the word had followed her. Through the kitchens where she scrubbed pots until her knuckles split. Through the barns where she slept, because nobody in her father's hall would share a hearth with a cursed child. Through every morning, through every night, through every meal she had been allowed to eat standing up against a wall. One word. 7 years. Wolfless. Tonight they had dragged her into the pit again. The pit was a circle of packed earth in the heart of the northern stockade. Pine torches at the rim. The kind of fire that made the air smell like burning fat and old prayers. Hundreds of wolves pressed shoulder to shoulder above the ring, their eyes flashing every color but the dull human brown of her own. Green, gold, copper. Hungry, the hunters were already there waiting, 12 of them. Royal, hard men in black leather and chain mail. On each chest the silver sigil of the Iron Crown, a wolf's skull crowned in thorns. Royal hunters did not fight in pits. Royal hunters were executions in velvet, so tonight was not a fight. Tonight was supposed to be a funeral with an audience. Somewhere up on the rim her father stood. Lord Vane, Pack Alpha of the North, the man whose blood she carried. He would not look at her. He never did on these nights. He had stopped looking at her the year her mother died. The year the elders had walked into the great hall and announced that the gods had cursed him with a daughter who could not shift. A stain. A demon child. He had been silent that night. He was silent now. The beater jerked her chain and her bare feet hit the ground inside the ring. Skin peeled off her shin from the iron's bite. She did not flinch. She had stopped flinching at 12. The crowd above her was already shouting bets. How long would she last? Where would they cut her open first? Whether she would scream? Whether she could even scream? She listened to them and felt nothing. Because that was the thing nobody up there had ever understood about Wolfless. You could not kill what was already gone. The gate at the far end of the pit groaned open. 12 men stepped through. Not wolves in this form, not yet. But she could smell the wolf coiled under their skin like smoke under a closed door. She had grown up smelling that. She had grown up sleeping in barns to escape it. The laird hunter was a broad man with a scar splitting his lip. He looked at her and grinned, like a man looking at a tied calf. So this is the Vane shame, his voice carried. He wanted it to carry, the little wolfless rat. He cracked his knuckles, slow, theatrical, made for the rim above. His Majesty has tired of waiting for your father to dispose of you. We are to make it quick, she blinked. Once so. Her own father had sold her death to the crown. The crown had sent men to collect. Something shifted in her chest. It was not anger. Anger had a shape. Anger had teeth. This had neither. This was older, quicker, worse. The hunter lunged. She did not think. She let go the thing inside her, the thing that was not a wolf, the thing that had been moving in her for weeks. Ever since the last full moon when she had woken in the woods with her hands buried in the throat of a stag she did not remember killing, uncoiled. Time slowed to honey. She saw the blade angle for her ribs. She stepped. The way a leaf comes off a branch in still air. Her small scarred fingers closed around his wrist and twisted. The bones inside went to powder. A sound like dry kindling snapping under a boot. He screamed. She had never heard a royal hunter scream. It was, she thought distantly, a very beautiful sound. The kind of sound her mother had not been allowed to make at the end. The other 11 came at her at once. Later she would not remember it as fighting. Later she would remember it as gardening. The pulling of weeds, the snapping of stems, the quiet, patient work of clearing a field that had grown too thick. A throat opened under her hand. A spine folded the wrong way. A man tried to shift mid-charge and she struck him while his bones were still soft. He came apart like wet bread. 6 men. The other 6 dragged themselves toward the gate, leaving streaks of dark blood on the pale earth. The pit went silent, not the kind of silent a crowd goes when it is bored. The kind of silent a crowd goes when it has just remembered that it is mortal. She stood barefoot in a circle of corpses. Her hands hung at her sides. The iron collar still locked around her throat, blood on her cheek that was not hers. Amber eyes that were not the amber of any wolf above the rim. Up on the rim her father did not breathe. Up higher still on the king's gallery, a voice cut through the silence, a young man's voice, calm, cold, curious. The voice of someone who had not been surprised in 11 years and was beginning, against his will, to be surprised tonight. Clean her. Bring her to my palace. The torches guttered. The crowd slowly found its breath again, but the girl in the pit did not. She kept her eyes on the dirt at her feet, and on the smear of red across her own knuckles. And she understood distantly that whatever came next, she was no longer the kind of thing that could be sold for an evening's entertainment in a northern ring. She was something else now. She did not yet know what. Kailen Moore had not been surprised in 11 years, not since the night his mother had been poisoned at her own coronation feast. Not since he, 16 years old and freshly shifted, had torn out his uncle's throat with teeth still milk-soft. Surprise. He had decided that night was a luxury for men who had not yet learned what the world truly was. Tonight the world had surprised him. He stood on the high gallery of the northern pit, one gloved hand resting on the cold stone rail, and watched the small barefoot girl in the bloodied dress as they unchained her and led her stumbling toward the gate. She did not look up at him. She looked at nothing. Her eyes, even from this distance, were the wrong color for a wolf, amber, almost gold. But not the gold of an alpha. He knew that gold, he had it. This was older, queerder, the gold of riverbeds, of buried things. Behind him his first sword cleared his throat. Sir Aldwyn Stone, 60 next winter, scarred, steady, grey at the temples. He had served Kailen's father before him. He had served Kailen's grandfather before that. 6 dead majesty. Royal hunters. The Vane Alpha is offering his life in apology. Kailen did not turn. Refuse it. His life is worth less than the men he wasted. Yes. Majesty, he sold his daughter into a pit. Did you know that? A small pause. I suspected, Majesty. A pack alpha sold his blood to the crown to be killed for entertainment. His voice was very soft. The softness was the dangerous part. Aldwyn had served long enough to know, and then she killed half of my men with her hands. Her hands, Aldwyn. Yes, Majesty. What is she? Aldwyn was silent. It was not a question one answered. Kailen turned at last. The torchlight caught in the silver wolf skull pinned at his throat. His own eyes were the molten gold of a ruling alpha, and when he was angry they burned brighter like coals breathed on. They were burning now, quietly. A banked fire. They called her Wolfless. Yes, Majesty. My hunters could not bring her down. No, Majesty. Then she is not Wolfless. He turned back to the rail. Down in the pit, servants were already scrubbing the blood off the pale earth with stiff brushes, as if the next entertainment could begin within the hour. She is something. And I will know what. Yes, Majesty. Bring me her father in chains, quietly. I want him alive when he reaches the capital. Yes, Majesty. A beat, and the girl. See that she is washed. Gently, Aldwyn. If a single one of my men puts a rough hand on her, I will know, and I will take that hand. Yes, Majesty. Aldwyn bowed. He withdrew. Kailen stood alone on the gallery for a long moment after that. He listened to the night. The northern forest rustled beyond the stockade walls. Vast, black, full of things older than the wolves who walked over them. He could smell the girl's blood on the air now, mingled with the blood of his hunters, and beneath both of those, faint and strange, a third scent he could not name. It was not wolf, it was not human. It was something he had read about once, long ago, in a book his mother had hidden behind a loose stone in her library. A book she had whispered to him about the night before she died. A book he had spent 11 years searching for and never found. She had held his face in her hands that night. He had been 15, he remembered it clearly, the dry warmth of her palms, the smell of cedar in her hair, the way her eyes had been a little too bright, as if she had already understood something she did not have time to teach him. If ever you find one, my heart, do not let them suffer, do not let them be afraid. Promise me. He had promised, without understanding, because she had asked 11 years later, in a stinking northern pit lit by pine torches. He understood. She had not been warning him. She had been preparing him. He closed his eyes briefly. Behind the lids he saw the girl again, small, barefoot, bloodied, the iron collar still at her throat. Clean her, he had said, bring her to my palace. He had meant it as inquiry, as ownership, as a king taking custody of a weapon his enemies had failed to destroy. He understood now that it had become something else. A promise. He would not let her be afraid. He would not let her suffer. Not anymore. He pushed away from the rail. The torches behind him flickered as he turned. Down the long gallery his guards stood to attention without his giving them the word. They knew the look on his face. They had not seen it often. They had not, in fact, seen it since he was 16 and had come up the gallery of his mother's burial hall, with his uncle's blood drying on his teeth. And a kingdom on his shoulders none of them had yet decided to follow. They had decided to follow him within the hour that night. Tonight, without knowing yet what they were following him toward, they decided again. A king walked down a torchlit gallery in the cold north. Behind him, a pit was being scrubbed clean for the next entertainment. Below him, somewhere in a stone room he had not yet seen, an old woman was filling a copper tub with water and lavender. And ahead of him, 6 days' hard travel south, the Iron Throne waited, for the first time since he had taken it at 16. He understood that the throne had been waiting for a particular night to begin a particular conversation. That night was tonight. Aldwin Stone had been a soldier for 43 years. He had buried 3 kings' worth of secrets. He had learned long ago that the worst things in any kingdom were not done in the dark. They were done in the daylight by men who slept well at night. He walked into Lord Leora Vane's tent at the rim of the stockade 1 hour after the pit emptied. Leora was sitting on a low stool, hands on his knees, head down. He had not been chained yet. Aldwin's men were standing in a half-circle around him, waiting on his word. The Vane Alpha looked smaller in his own tent than he had on the rim. That was how it always went. Men who were terrible in front of crowds were always smaller in their own light. Aldwin did not speak to him. He looked around the tent instead, cataloguing it the way a man catalogued any room he might have to defend or burn. Bed in the corner, brazier, a small table with 3 half-finished cups of mead, a campaign chest at the foot of the bed, brass-bound, closed. He walked to the chest. He opened it without asking. Behind him Leora finally spoke. His voice was hoarse. "That is my property." Aldwin did not look up, Lord Vane. "Tonight you have no property. Tonight you have only what the king lets you keep." There were letters in the chest, folded, stacked, the kind of correspondence a pack Alpha kept for years and then could not be made to throw away. Aldwin went through them with the patient hands of a man who had been through 10,000 other men's papers and learned to hate exactly none of it. It took him 4 minutes. The letter was at the bottom, heavy paper. The Vane seal in dark wax, broken once and then resealed clumsily. The hand was Leora's own. Aldwin knew the hand. He had seen it at 3 winter councils. Sloped, slow. The hand of a man who did not write often. The salutation was to the crown. The salutation was specific. It named Kailen by his old style. The style Kailen had not used since he was 16, which meant Leora had not written this letter recently. He had written it years ago and held it. Waiting, Aldwin read it once, then twice, then a 3rd time. Because some things a man reads and does not yet feel. When he was done, he folded the letter again. He put it in the inner pocket of his coat. He turned. Leora had not moved. "You wrote to the king." Leora did not answer. 3 years ago, you wrote to the king. You asked him to send hunters. You asked him to make it quick. You said your pack would not survive another winter with the curse alive in your house. Leora closed his eyes. You called her the curse, Lord Vane, in writing, in your own hand. To your sovereign, "My pack, your pack ate her bread for 19 years. You do not understand." "No, I do not." Aldwin stepped closer. He was old. He was slower than he had been at 30, but he had not lost the trick of stillness. The trick of standing exactly close enough to make a man feel his weight without ever touching him. "I have served 3 kings, Lord Vane. I have buried sons. I have signed orders that took men from their own beds at midnight. And I have never, in 43 years, met a father who put his name to a letter like this." Leora's mouth worked. No sound came. Did her mother know? That broke him. Aldwin watched it happen. He had watched many men break. This one broke quietly, the way old beams break under snow. A small crack inside somewhere. Then the slow yielding of the rest of him. "Her mother begged me. Before she died, she begged me to protect her. She said the elders were wrong. She said the child was not cursed. She said she was." He stopped. He could not say the word. "Aldwin did not help him. She begged me, and the elders said burn her, drown her, give her to the woods, and I told myself a servant lives. A servant lives, so I made her a servant, and And then the crown sent word. 3 years ago. They said they would take the pack, the lands, everything. Unless I cleaned my own house, cleaned. Rise looked up at. That, cleaned, that was the word they used, yes. Aldwin looked at him for one long moment. Something behind his eyes shifted. A small piece settling into a slot it had been built for 43 years ago, and never yet been allowed to fill, Lord Vane. The crown did not send you that letter. Not from any chamber I have ever stood in. It carried the seal. Many things carry seals. He waited for that to land. It landed. Riss's face went the color of old parchment. Then who? That is what we are going to find out. He turned to his men. Chain him. Quietly. He travels with us south. The king will not lay hands on him on the road. The king will speak to him in his own hall. Until then, nobody touches him. Nobody. I will personally take the hand of any man who does. Yes, Sir Aldwin. You will speak again at the king's pleasure, Lord Vane. Until then, you will be silent. He walked out of the tent into the cold northern night. The letter was a weight in his coat the size of a stone. He did not yet know what to think about the girl. He did not yet know what to think about the king. He did not yet know what to think about anything. But he knew one thing. This had been done in the daylight. By a man who had been sleeping well at night for 3 years. And the seal on the letter that broke that man had not, in fact, come from the king who had given him the order, which meant the wrong men had been writing letters to pack alphas in this kingdom for longer than anyone in the Iron Crown had yet understood. They washed her in a copper tub in a stone room that smelled of lavender and lye. She had not been touched gently in 7 years, so the maid's hands were the worst part, not the bruises. Not the rust marks where the collar had been struck off by an apologetic smith with frightened eyes. Not the dried blood under her fingernails that came out only after the 3rd soaking. The hands, a small woman, older, 60 maybe, brown amber eyes that had once been wolf eyes and were now just tired. A kind mouth. The mouth of a woman who had said good morning 1,000 times to people who had not said good morning back. She did not speak at first. She only worked. She unwound the matted braid Leora had not been allowed to cut since she was 12. She combed it out strand by strand with a wide bone comb, never pulling. Even when the comb caught, Leora sat very still. Her hands folded in the water would not stop shaking. It was not the killing that shook her. The killing had felt like setting down a stone she had been carrying since she was 12. And she was ashamed of that. In a quiet place inside her chest she did not yet have a name for. It was the kindness that shook her. The warm water, the lavender, the bone comb. She did not know what to do with kindness. She had no shape for it. It slid off her like rain off a stone roof, and the stone under the rain ached. You have a name, child. The voice was so soft Leora almost did not hear it. She tried to speak. Her throat would not cooperate. She tried again. Leora, Leora. The maid said it slowly, as if testing the weight of it on her tongue. An old name. Leora did not answer. My grandmother carried it. In the south, she was a midwife. She brought half the children of a small village into the world. Then she lived long enough to bring some of their children too. A pause. Your mother chose your name, yes. Then your mother was wise. Leora looked down into the water. It had gone pink with her blood and the blood of others. My mother is dead. The hand in her hair stilled for one breath, then resumed. Gentle as before, I am sorry, child. Leora did not answer. She did not know how to be sorry at. The phrase made no shape inside her. People had not said sorry to her in 7 years. Not for anything, not even when they hurt her on purpose. How did she go, child? Leora hesitated. The maid kept combing. They said grief. They said she would not eat after the Winter Elders' Council. They said she lay in her room for 40 days, and then she stopped. The maid did not say more than that. But Leora felt the small change in the older woman's breath. The small, careful way Mara's fingers slowed. As if Mara had been listening for a particular shape of story and had just heard it, and recognized something inside it that Leora did not yet have words for. She did not ask. When the bath was done, the maid wrapped her in a robe of soft grey wool. She combed her hair until it lay smooth down her back, the color of dark honey. Leora had not seen her own hair smooth in 7 years. The maid brought clothes. Not finery, clean things. A linen shift, a dark wool traveling dress. Soft leather boots that did not pinch the bones of her feet, and around Leora's throat, in place of the iron collar, the maid fastened a thin silver chain, a small pendant on it, a coin, old, dull, worn smooth from 1,000 other hands. On one side, a wolf over a crescent moon, over a pair of upraised cupped hands. What is it? A traveler's coin. from across the eastern sea. From the old country, Leora did not know that country. She had heard of it only in stories her mother had sometimes told when no one else was in the room. Stories about silver-haired women who walked beneath cold moons and were not afraid. My grandmother gave it to me. When I left her village, it means the moon sees you even when no one else does. You are not alone on the road. Leora's eyes burned. She had not cried in 7 years. She did not cry now, but the burning was worse than tears. I cannot take this, you can. The maid's wrinkled hand closed briefly, fiercely, over Leora's wrist. You will. Where you are going, child, you will need a moon to see you. And one day, when you understand a little more, you will know why I am giving you this one and not another. Leora did not understand. She did not yet have to. The coin lay warm against her sternum. She closed her hand around it. Hard, I do not know your name, the maid smiled. A small, tired smile, old Mara. Where I come from, that is enough. Then she was led outside into the cold grey dawn, where a black carriage drawn by 4 enormous black horses stood waiting in the muddy yard. The horses smelled of wolf, not flesh and hay smell. The old hot scent of predators wearing horse shape, royal beasts. Even the horses of the Iron Crown were not what they appeared to be. She climbed in. The door shut. Through the small window she saw him, across the yard, on his knees in the mud, hands bound behind his back, her father. He looked at her. His face in the grey dawn was the color of old ash. His mouth moved. She thought perhaps he was trying to say her name. She turned her face away from the window. The carriage lurched forward. Beneath her dress, against her skin, the traveler's coin was warming, slowly, like a small heart waking up for the first time after a long winter sleep. The road south was 4 days' hard travel from the northern stockade to the first proper way station. They lost the first day to weather. They lost the second to a broken axle. By the third day, the snow had thinned, and the road had begun to bend down out of the high passes, and Sir Aldwyn Stone, riding ahead of the carriage on a lean grey mare, had begun to think about the letter again. He had not stopped thinking about the letter since the moment he had folded it into his coat. A pack Alpha had written to the king 3 years ago asking for the death of his own daughter. The letter had carried a royal reply. That reply had ordered hunters to the northern stockade. 12 hunters had arrived. 6 of them had died inside an hour, and the king sitting on the Iron Throne in the south had not known any of it was happening. Which meant the letter from the crown that had ordered the hunting had not, in fact, been from the crown. Which meant somebody in the palace had been writing letters in the king's name. For 3 years, Aldwyn had been a soldier for 43 years. He had not, in all that time, been wrong about a feeling in a saddle. The feeling in this saddle was very wrong. He relaxed 12 minutes too soon. The ambush came at the bottom of a switchback. 7 men, maybe 8. They came out of the pines on the high side of the road with crossbows already loaded. They were dressed in dark traveling cloaks with no insignia, no mark, no crown. Which was the second thing wrong? Aldwyn understood before the first bolt landed in his shoulder. Highway brigands did not attack royal carriages on the King's Road in broad daylight. Highway brigands did not have crossbows of that quality. Highway brigands did not pick a switchback engineered to pin a carriage between rock and drop. So these were not brigands. These were men who had been told exactly where the carriage would be and when. By someone who knew the king's own carriage schedule. By someone, perhaps, who had been writing letters in the king's name for 3 years and could not afford for the girl in the carriage to reach the throne hall and tell her story. He pulled the bolt out of his shoulder one-handed. He did not cry out. The first guard fell off his horse, bolt through the eye, dead before he hit the road. The second guard charged the tree line and made it 8 feet. The third guard wheeled his horse around the back of the carriage to draw the fire, and Aldwyn opened his mouth to call him off. Too late. A bolt took him through the throat. That was when the carriage door opened from the inside. Aldwyn looked up at exactly the wrong moment. Leora Vane stepped down into the road. She did not look afraid. She looked the way she had looked in the pit. The thing inside her uncoiled. He saw it uncoil, not with his eyes. With the part of his mind that had been a wolf since he was 12. The part that knew when a predator stepped into a clearing, even if the clearing had been empty a moment before. The road went quiet. The crossbow men hesitated. Just for one breath, that was enough. She crossed the road. She did not run. She walked. The first crossbow man, the one closest, the one who should have been the easiest shot of his life, did not fire. He stared at her like a man who had walked into the wrong room of a house he thought he owned. She took his throat in her hand. She closed her hand. He came apart. The other 6 broke. They turned. They ran. Some of them dropped their crossbows. Some of them tried to shift mid-stride and went down on all fours in the road with their bones still soft. She did not chase them. She stood in the middle of the road, hands at her sides. Breathing slowly, the wind moved her hair. Aldwin pressed his good hand to his bleeding shoulder. He limped his mare toward her. He did not speak for a long moment. Lady Vane, I am not a lady. Today you are. She turned her face up to him. He saw very clearly in the grey light that she was 19. He had to remind himself of that. He kept forgetting. They were not bandits. No, they were waiting for me. Yes, she nodded. Once. As if filing the information somewhere. Someone in the palace does not want me to arrive. Aldwin pulled the bolt fragment out of his shoulder the rest of the way and pressed his coat against the wound. Lady Vane. The same someone has been writing letters in the king's name for at least 3 years. Your father carried one of those letters in a campaign chest the night the king's hunters came for you. I checked the seal myself by firelight last night. It was a false die, a good one. But false. She did not react for one breath, then she laughed just once. Short, dry, without any humor in it, so my father did not know what, that the man who told him to clean his house was not the king, Lady Vane. Your father is a coward and a fool. But yes, he did not know. She looked down at the body of the man she had just killed. Then there are 2 things in the palace I am going to find. The one who killed my mother, and the one who wrote those letters. She glanced up at him. Are they the same one, Sir Aldwin? He looked at her for a long moment. Lady Vane. In 43 years I have only ever found one rule about quiet murders in a court. They always come in 2s. And the second is always closer to the first than anyone wants to admit. Then he did something he had not done for any rider in any other carriage of any other lord he had ever escorted. He swung down off his horse. He stood on the road in front of her. He bowed. It was not deep. He was a proud man. He was an old man. But it was a bow. She stared at him. No, Lady Vane, you have not. Then what? You have killed 7 men in front of me in 2 weeks. I have served 3 kings. I have buried more friends than I can count on both hands, and I have never, in any of that, watched anyone do what you just did. So I bow to you once, and then I get back on my horse. And we ride. She did not know what to say, because no one had ever bowed to her. She climbed back into the carriage. The door shut. Aldwin pulled himself back up onto the mare. The wound in his shoulder was hot and bad, and he was going to need a surgeon at the next way station. He did not care. He looked once at the bodies on the road. Then he gave the order to ride. The carriage rolled into the inner courtyard of the palace at dusk on the 6th day. It was the slow blue dusk of late autumn, the kind of dusk that made torches look softer than they were, the kind of dusk that made even a stone palace look like a thing carved out of breath instead of stone. Kailen Moore had told himself he would not meet her at the gate. He had told himself he would receive her formally in the throne hall, like any other prisoner of the crown. He was at the gate. He stood in the inner courtyard with his hands clasped behind his back. He wore a plain black coat, no markings of his rank, no silver wolf skull at his throat. He wanted to see her as she stepped down, not as a king sees a prisoner, as a man sees something he has been waiting 11 years to recognize and only just learned the name of. The carriage door opened. She stepped down. She was smaller than he remembered. In the pit she had seemed enormous, a thing of edges and silence. Here in the soft blue dusk of his own courtyard, she was a slight girl in a wool dress, dark honey hair plaited down her back, a pendant at her throat catching the last light. Her eyes found his. They did not flinch. They did not bow. They measured him. He felt it, a quiet, careful weighing. He found, to his own surprise, that he respected it. Lady Vane. A small flicker crossed her face. He understood it immediately. No one had ever called her that. Aldwin's bow on the road 3 days ago had not been enough to change it. A title from a stranger on a mountain road was one thing. A title from a king in his own courtyard was another. I am not a lady. I am a Wolfless, in the Iron Crown. I decide what people are. Then you are a fool, Majesty. The courtyard went absolutely still. Behind him, Aldwin made a small, choked sound. A page dropped a scroll. Somewhere a horse stamped, and even the horse seemed to stamp apologetically. Kailen looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. It was not a smile his court would have recognized. It was the smile of the boy he had been before his mother died. Small, real. A little surprised at itself, perhaps, he held out his arm. He did not touch her. He held the arm out, open, a space she could step into if she wanted to. A space she could leave alone if she wanted to. He had never offered an arm like that to anyone in his life. She looked at it for one long beat. She did not take it. But she did not flinch from it either. She walked beside him, half a step behind, through the inner courtyard, through the lower galleries, past the great hall where she would have expected him to take her, where the throne sat empty at the far end, the iron of it catching the torchlight like a held breath. He did not take her there. He took her past it, up 2 flights of narrow stone stairs. To a door he opened himself with his own hand, without a guard. He gestured her through. She stepped in. It was a library, high-vaulted, smelling of cedar and old paper, with a great arched window that looked out over the southern gardens. The books climbed the walls in galleries 3 stories high. A fire burned low in the grate. 2 armchairs stood before it. On a small table between them, a tray with bread, cheese, dark honey, and a pot of tea that was still steaming. She stood in the doorway for a long moment. She looked at the room with an expression he could not name. Not awe, not fear, hunger. The hunger of a person who had not known rooms like this existed and did not yet know how to want one. Sit, eat. You have traveled 6 days, she sat. Slowly, her hands stayed folded in her lap. She did not touch the food. He poured her a cup of tea and set it within her reach. He sat in the other chair. He did not look at her. He looked at the fire. It seemed for some reason important not to look at her. The fire crackled. Somewhere above them in the high galleries of books, a moth tapped against a lamp. He thought about the letter Aldwin had brought him at the rim of the northern stockade. He thought about the false seal Aldwin had found by firelight. He thought about the ambush on the King's Road that had nearly killed her on the 3rd day. He thought about the 3rd scent on the air at the pit. He thought about his mother's hands on his face when he had been 15. You know why you are here. You think I am a weapon. His chest tightened. I thought that. Yes, 6 days ago he let the fire crack between them for a long time, and now I think you for something my mother warned me about the night before she was murdered, by people I now believe have been writing letters in my name for 3 years, possibly longer. Perhaps as long as 11, her hand rose to the pendant at her throat without seeming to know it was doing it. It closed around the coin. What do you think I am? He leaned forward. He spoke very quietly, as if the word itself were a thing that might break, but he did not say it. Not yet, because saying it now, in this room, with the fire low and her small hand closed around a silver coin from a country across a sea she had never seen, saying it now would be too much for one night. Tomorrow he would say it. Tonight he poured her another cup of tea she had not touched. He sat in his mother's chair. He watched the firelight move on her face, and he understood for the first time in 11 years what his mother had been preparing him for. Not a throne, not a war, a promise. Outside the great arched window, the moon was rising over the southern gardens, round, white. Patient, old Mara had said the moon sees you even when no one else does, for the first time in 7 years in this stone room, in this strange chair. In this kingdom that had spent her father's lifetime trying to kill her, Leora Vane allowed herself to wonder if that might possibly be true. The first morning Leora woke in a room where no one had locked the door. She did not know what to do with the unlocked door. She lay in the bed for an hour before she got up, because she kept waiting for someone to come and tell her she had taken the wrong bed, to tell her she had been moved here by accident, to say a servant had laid out the wrong clothes for the wrong girl and the actual girl was downstairs. And what was this Wolfless doing under a clean sheet? No one came, so she got up. She washed her face from a basin of water that was not pink with anyone's blood. She put on the grey dress that had been left folded over a chair. She braided her own hair for the first time in a week. The braid was clumsy. She had forgotten how to braid her own hair. There had been Mara on the road. There had been no one in the 7 years before that. Then she walked downstairs to find the library. She found it because the king was already there, standing at the great arched window with his back to her, coat off, sleeves rolled to the elbow, reading something. The first lamp of the morning was lit behind him on the small table, and the southern gardens were still grey with mist outside the window, and Sir Aldwin Stone was at the door with his good shoulder against the frame like he had been there all night. Aldwin was the first to notice her. He nodded. Once. The way an old soldier salutes a younger one he has decided to keep alive. She nodded back. The same way, Kailen turned from the window. Good. You came down, you thought I would not. I thought you might prefer to be brought breakfast. I am not. A lady. I know, a small pause. There is bread on the side table, and honey. The same honey from last night. I checked. She did not know what to do with that either, because nobody had ever checked. For the next 3 weeks he came every night. Sometimes he was already there when she arrived. Sometimes she was already there when he came. Aldwin took to standing at the door like a piece of furniture that had decided very late in life to acquire opinions. He brought his own chair on the second night. By the fourth night the chair was there even when he wasn't. They did not talk about the pit. They did not talk about her father, who was somewhere below stairs in the king's own dungeon, eating better food than he had ever fed her. They did not talk about the ambush on the road. They did not talk about the false seal Aldwin had pulled out of the campaign chest. They talked about books. He had pulled one off a high shelf the second night. A book on the geography of the northern reaches. He had set it open on the table between them and asked her to read the page. She had stared at the page. He had stared at her staring. Then he had understood. You cannot read. My mother taught me before she died. I can read. She had taken the book. She had read the page out loud, slowly, because she had not done it in 7 years. Because the words felt strange in her mouth the way her own hair had felt strange under Mara's comb. The reading was clumsy, like the braid. He did not correct her. He did not finish her sentences. He waited. When she got to the bottom of the page, she looked up. He was watching her with an expression she had not yet seen on his face. She did not have a word for it, not pity, not surprise. Something quieter? Your mother? Yes. Was wise? Yes. 3 weeks. By the end of the 3rd week, she had read 4 books. By the end of the 3rd week, Aldwin had moved his chair an inch closer to the fire. By the end of the 3rd week, the dreams had started. The dreams were of a woman, silver hair, or hair the color of cold water. Leora could never tell. The woman stood under a moon that was always full. She did not speak. She looked at Leora the way Leora's mother had looked at her once, when Leora had been very small, before the elders, before the word Wolfless had been invented for her. Sometimes the woman raised a hand. Sometimes the woman simply waited. Leora did not tell the king about the dreams. She did not yet have the language to. There was something else she did not tell him. Twice that week the candles in her bedroom had gone out at exactly the 3rd hour of the morning. Both times she had relit them. Both times she had checked the door. Both times the door had been unlocked exactly as she had left it. But both times, when she relit the candles, the wax beneath the wicks was warmer than it should have been, as if a hand had been near them, recently. She did not have a word for that either. But the coin at her throat had warmed each time, and so she did not write it off. She slept with the coin in her fist on the 3rd night. And on every night after that, on the 22nd night, the king did not come. Aldwin was not at the door. The library was empty. The fire had been left to burn down to coals. The tray with the bread and the honey was not on the table. Leora stood in the doorway with her hand on the frame, and felt, for the first time since she had come to the palace, a small cold thing in her chest she recognized as fear. So this was where it ended. This was the night they decided what to do with her. She turned to go back upstairs. She walked straight into Aldwin. Lady Vane, where is he? Below where? His mother's old study. Why? Aldwin looked at her for one long beat. Then he stepped aside. He has finally found what he has been looking for 11 years. The study was 3 flights down. A small room, half the size of the library. A single window that looked out not over the southern gardens but over the slate roofs of the lower palace, and beyond that, the dark line of the western forest. There was no fire in this room. There had not been a fire in this room in 11 years. Kailen was on his knees in front of the western wall. He had taken 3 books off a high shelf and set them on the floor beside him. The 3rd book was open on a low table by his elbow, but he was not looking at it. He was looking at the wall, a loose stone. He had pulled it out an inch. She stood in the doorway. You found it, I found it. Tonight. How? I came in to look for something else. I have come in to look for something else once a week for 11 years. Tonight I leaned against the wall. He gave a small dry sound that might have been a laugh if it had landed differently. 11 years. She stepped into the room. She did not ask if she could. She knelt next to him on the cold stone floor. He pulled the loose stone the rest of the way out. Behind it was a small space. The kind a child could have hidden a doll in, or a frightened woman could have hidden a single book in. He reached in. He pulled out a book. It was small, the size of his palm, bound in dark leather worn smooth by hands. The cover had a mark pressed into it that was not the wolf skull of the Iron Crown. A crescent moon. Over a pair of upraised cupped hands, Leora's own hand went, without her telling it to the pendant at her throat. Kailen saw it. He did not say anything. He opened the book. The first page was a name, written in a hand that was not his mother's voice but was unmistakably his mother's hand. He had her letters. He had her last writing samples from the week she died. He knew the curl of the L. He knew the small drop in the Y. He knew the way she crossed hers with the smallest possible mark, as if even her ink had been hiding. The name on the page was Isolde Morn. Below it, in the same hand, "The moon sees me even when no one else can." He could not speak for a long moment. Leora reached out without meaning to. Her finger brushed the page. The smallest touch. "That is almost what Mara said to me. The night they washed me, I know." He turned the page. The second page was a map. Not of the kingdom. Not of the northern reaches. Not of anything Leora had ever seen in any geography book he had handed her over 3 weeks. It was a map of bloodlines, 9 branching down a page. Some crossed out, some circled, some marked with a small crescent moon. A great many marked with a single crossed line, the way a man marks a debt that has been paid, or a name that has been ended. He turned the page again. A list. 8 names. The third name was Isolde of Weifrith. Above it, in his mother's careful hand, hunted. 11 springs ago. 11 springs ago. The summer he had been 15. The autumn she had been crowned. The winter she had died. He turned the page again. The fourth page held only one line. "If you find another, my heart, do not let her be afraid. Do not let her suffer. Promise me." He closed the book. He sat with his hands flat on top of it for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was not the voice of the King of the Iron Crown. It was the voice of a 15-year-old boy who had not been allowed to understand his mother's last sentence until tonight. They did not kill her for the throne. No, they killed her for what she was. Yes, and whoever did it is still in this palace. The same hand that has been writing letters in my name for 3 years. Maybe 11. He looked up at her. 11 years. He had spent 11 years building a kingdom on the wrong story. There is one more thing in the back. He turned the book over, untucked a folded scrap of paper from the inside back cover, opened it. A list of names, 6 of them, written quickly, the hand shaky, as if his mother had written this list in the dark, perhaps the night before she died. He read the names. He went very still. 3 of the 6 names were men in his current court. One of them had been at his coronation. One of them had served at his elbow for 9 years. One of them was, in fact, the man who oversaw the kitchens of the palace at this exact moment. Kailen closed his eyes. "Leora, yes, I want you in the throne hall tomorrow. I have decided what to do with your father. He is going to speak, in front of the court. He is going to tell us the names on the letter he carried for 3 years. Which of these 3 men in this list it came from. Or whether it came from a 4th name we have not yet been given." She stiffened. "Kailen, you will be there. You will stand at the foot of the dais. You will hear him. And then I will let you decide what comes next." He did not see her flinch. He did not yet understand that she had heard the word dais and seen very briefly a circle of packed earth and a ring of corpses. But she went because he had asked, and because she did not yet know how to say no to the only man in 19 years who had said please. She wore the dark grey gown the seamstresses had made for her, long sleeves, high collar, the traveller's coin tucked under the cloth where no one could see it. She did not want a court watching her hand at her throat. She did not want a court seeing what she touched when she was afraid. The throne hall was longer than she had thought it would be. She had walked past it on the first night. She had seen the iron at the end of it. She had not understood, until she was made to walk the full length of the room with the eyes of the court on her, that the room had been built to do exactly that. To make every step toward the throne feel like a step toward judgment. She walked it anyway. She did not look down. She stopped at the foot of the dais where Aldwyn had told her to stop, and she did not kneel. Kailen was on the throne. He looked older from here. The iron behind his head made his eyes look harder than they were. He did not smile when he saw her. He did not need to. The great doors opened at the far end. They brought her father in. He walked between 2 guards. He had not been beaten. Kailen's orders held. He had been fed. He had been clean. But 3 weeks in a stone cell had taken the alpha out of him the way a tanner takes the life out of a hide. He walked like an old man. He kept his eyes on the marble at his feet. When he reached the dais, When he saw her standing there, he fell to his knees on the marble. He did not fall before the throne. He fell before her, Leora. His voice was wrecked. She did not move. She had thought she would have a great deal to say. She had practiced words in her head on the carriage ride for 6 days. She had nothing now. He kept his head bowed. Your mother? Your mother begged me. Before she died, she begged me to protect you. You sold me, I did. You wrote a letter, I did. You called me a curse. In your own hand, I did. Stand up, Leora. Stand up. Lord Vane. The throne hall had gone very quiet. Kailen on the throne did not move. Rise stood, with his hands on his knees, with his back not all the way straight. He had been an alpha all his life. He was not one now. He was just her father. She stepped closer to him. Now look at me. He looked. She had not seen his face in 7 years. She had stopped looking at him at 12, so she had not known until this moment that his face had changed, that the years had laid themselves down on him the same way they had laid themselves down on her, that his mouth was older than her mouth, that his eyes were the same color as her eyes, that she had his eyebrows. It was the smallest, cruelest thing she could have learned tonight. Tell me about my mother, Leora. Please, you will tell me. He took one breath. Then another. Then the words came out of him in a long, uneven stream like water out of a broken pitcher. She was poisoned. The throne hall did not breathe. She did not die of grief, child. I told them she did. I told you she did. Because the elders said it was safer for you. So I let it be grief. When, 7 years ago, the winter you were 12, there was a feast. The southern packs had come up for the solstice. Your mother served the wine herself, the way she always did. She drank from her own cup last. To show the table it was safe, he swallowed. Her cup was the only one that had been touched. By a serving man I did not know. From the king's larder, I was told. A boy sent up from the south as a gift, to teach the northern hall how the Iron Crown took its wine. He was gone the next morning. I sent men. They found his cot in the kitchens of a chapter house 3 weeks later. He had hung himself. Leora's hand was on the coin at her throat. Who sent him? That is what I have been trying to find out for 7 years. And the letter you carried came 3 years after she died, by the same hand that arranged the boy. I am almost certain. The seal was the king's. The words were not the words a king writes. I knew it the first time I held it. He looked up at her. Leora. Whoever sent the wine boy. Whoever wrote the letter 3 years later. They have been killing women like your mother for at least 200 years. They call it cleansing. They do it in plain sight. They kill at feasts. They kill at weddings. They kill in mourning halls. They never kill in dark places, because they believe the moon cannot see what is done in the light. He looked once at Kailen, then back at his daughter, and the letter I carried, the one with the false seal, came from a hand in this palace. I would swear to it on the bones of 9 generations of my house. The throne hall did not breathe. 2 women, 11 years apart, in 2 pack houses 600 miles from each other, killed by the same network for the same reason. And both their orphaned children sitting in this room together now, without having yet had the words for what they were. Kailen rose from the throne. He came down off the dais. He crossed to her, without thinking. He put his hand on her shoulder. He did not ask. She flinched. It was a small flinch, almost nothing. But he felt it go through him like a struck bell, and he understood in one terrible, clear instant what he had done. He had touched her without asking, in front of the man who had owned her, beaten her, sold her. She turned her amber eyes up to him. They were not afraid. They were cold. They were the eyes from the pit. Take your hand off me, Majesty, he did, instantly. He stepped back as if scalded. You said your mother told you not to let me be afraid. Her voice shook. Only once you brought him here without telling me. You sat me at the foot of your throne like a prize, and you touched me without asking, in front of him, so he could see who owns me now, Leora. That was it not what you meant to do? He could not answer, because God help him, some part of him, some old alpha part, had wanted exactly that. To stand at her shoulder, to be seen standing at her shoulder, to mark in front of the man who had failed her that she was under the Iron Crown's protection now. His protection. He heard the word in his own head and was sickened by it. I see. She walked past him, past her father, past the guards, past the great doors. She did not run. She walked with her back straight, like a queen leaving a hall that had disappointed her, the doors shut behind her. Kailen Moore stood in the middle of his own throne room with his hand still half raised and understood that he had just lost something he had not known until that moment that he wanted. She did not weep until she reached the gardens. Even then it was not weeping, not properly. She had forgotten how. It was a hot, choked thing in her throat that would not come up and would not go down. And she walked through the formal rose paths of the upper garden with her fists clenched and her breath coming in small, ragged tears. She had trusted him. That was the unbearable thing, in 3 weeks of quiet evenings in his mother's library. In 3 weeks of him pouring her tea and asking her like a person, what she wanted to read tonight. She had begun, despite 7 years of the cellar and the pit, to trust. And he had taken her shoulder in front of her father like a man steadies a horse. She walked until the rose paths gave way to a wilder place. An overgrown corner of the garden the gardeners had given up to the moss. A low stone wall ran along the eastern edge, beside a black pool fed by a spring she could not see. She sat on the wall. She pressed the traveler's coin against her mouth. The moon was rising. Up over the eastern wall of the palace it came, and it laid a long silver path across the black pool, and something inside her, the thing that had uncoiled in the pit, uncoiled again. But softly this time, not in rage. In recognition, she looked down into the pool. The water had gone perfectly still, and in its black surface, by the white light of the moon, she saw her own reflection, and behind it, around it, a second shape, a woman, or a doe, or a tall pale figure with antlers of silver bone and eyes the color of riverbeds. The shape kept changing. It would not settle. It looked at her with her own face, then with her mother's face, then with no face at all. Daughter, the word came without sound. Daughter of the moon, daughter of the old country across the eastern sea. We have been calling you since you were 12. You did not hear us. They had put iron on you. Her hand flew to her throat. The traveler's coin, not iron, silver. Mara had known. Silver heard the moon. Iron deafened it. Daughter, the king is not your enemy. He touched me. She did not say it out loud. She thought it. The pool answered as if she had spoken. Yes, he is a fool. All the wolf kings are fools. They are made to be obeyed, and they forget that some of us were not made to obey. The shape in the water rippled. Leora thought absurdly that it was amused. But he is not your enemy, daughter. He is the one his mother prepared for you. You will know this when you are ready. What am I? You are moonborn, the old blood, older than the wolves. We were here before they were made. When the first Alphaba bargained with the moon for the gift of shifting, the moon took in return a tithe. 1 child every 100 years, born to a wolf line, but carrying our blood instead. You are that child this century. There has not been one in your kingdom for 300 years. The wolves have forgotten us. They call your kind wolfless. They mean it as an insult. It is in truth a coronation. She could not breathe. Your mother knew. She married a wolf alpha to hide you in plain sight. She gave you a name from the old country so that when we called you would answer. She died of the strain of hiding you and of the poison. The man who put it in her cup did not know what he was killing. He had been told only that she was a stain. He hanged himself 3 weeks later because something in him had begun to suspect. She is with us now. She is well. She watches. A small, terrible sob broke out of Leora's throat. The first thing she had let out of her body in 7 years that was not silence. The thing inside you, daughter, is not a wolf. It is older. It is the moon's hand. It is given, not born, and the king, the shape in the pool, was quiet for a long moment. The king's mother was moonborn too. The pool went still. Did he never tell you? He does not know. She hid it from him. To protect him. She was killed because someone did know. 11 years ago. At her coronation feast. By a different hand than killed your mother. But of the same blood. Of the same order. The Iron Crown has been hunting our blood for 200 years without understanding what it hunts. He is the first king in a long line who might learn. Teach him. If you can bear to, leave him. If you cannot. Either is a true path. Leora closed her eyes. The moon was warm on her face. Warm as a hand. Warm as her mother's hand had been the night she had braided Leora's hair for the last time. And whispered, "Be brave, my little one. Be brave." The pool went still. She was alone with the moon and the moss and the small silver coin warm in her palm after a long time, a very long time. She got up from the wall. But before she went back inside, the moon spoke once more. Quieter this time. Almost reluctant, daughter. There is one thing more. She waited. The hand that put the wine in your mother's cup 7 years ago. The hand that wrote the false letters to your father 3 years later. The hand that killed the queen at her coronation feast 11 years ago. They are 3 hands. But all 3 hands belong to the same house. And the head of that house is sleeping under this roof tonight. She did not ask his name. She did not have to. She had felt it herself every night for 3 weeks. the wax beneath her candles. The 3rd hour of the morning, she had been smelling for the wrong man all along. She had been smelling for a stranger. What she had to learn to smell for was a man who had been here, always. He had been sitting in the dark for 3 hours when she came in. He had not lit the fire. He had not lit a lamp. He sat in his mother's chair with his head bowed and his hands loose between his knees. He had been turning over in his mind every word he had ever said to her, looking for the place where he could have been less of a fool, finding only that the fool went all the way down. The door opened. He did not lift his head. If she had come to tell him she was leaving, he had decided he would let her go. He would give her gold, an escort, a writ of the crown's protection that no pack on the continent would dare challenge. He would not touch her again, not even to say goodbye. Majesty, he lifted his head. She stood in the doorway, the coin at her throat, her eyes gods. Her eyes were not cold anymore. They were not the eyes of the pit. They were tired and red-rimmed and very, very awake, Lady Vane. His voice came out rough. I owe you. Be quiet, a great deal to say. And I do not know if I can say it twice. He went quiet. She crossed the room slowly. She did not sit. She stood before the cold fireplace with her back half to him, and she looked into the dead grate as if she could see something there. He let her stand. He had learned in the last 6 hours the price of moving toward her without permission. Your mother was moonborn. His breath stopped. That is why she was killed. Not because of court politics. Not because of your uncle's ambition. Or not only. Someone in your court knew what she was. The same hand that has been hunting our blood for at least 200 years. They have been in this palace longer than your father. Longer than your grandfather. Possibly longer than the crown itself. A pause. I am moonborn too. The Wolfless are not cursed. We are something else. We are older than you. We were here first. He could not speak. Your mother made you promise not to let one of us suffer. Not to let one of us be afraid. She turned at last. The coin caught the moonlight from the great window. I have suffered, Majesty. I am not afraid anymore. But I have suffered. And today, in your throne hall, you frightened me. Not because you meant to, because you are an alpha. And alphas forget that some of us were not made to be steered, Leora. I am not finished. He shut his mouth. I came back. Because of 3 things. First, because your mother was one of mine, and I owe her memory the courtesy of teaching her son what she could not. Second, because somewhere in your court is a person who killed her, and killed my mother, the same house, and I would like very much to find them. She stopped. For the first time since she had come into the room, she looked uncertain. Her hand rose to the coin, closed around it, stayed, and third, her voice went very quiet, because when you touched my shoulder today in front of my father, I flinched, and I have been flinching from hands my whole life. But after I flinched, after Majesty, some part of me was sorry that you took your hand away. He closed his eyes. He did not trust himself to speak. His wolf, the quiet wolf, the wolf that had gone still the first time he saw her in this library, was making a sound inside him that he had never heard it make. It was not a growl, it was nearer to a whimper. The small, soft sound of an animal that has been alone in the dark a long time, and has just heard, very faintly, footsteps it knows. I will never, his voice cracked. He did not care. Touch you again without your asking. I swear it on my mother's grave, on the iron crown, on the wolf in me. Tell me you understand this, and I will never break it. I understand it. Good. He opened his eyes. She was watching him. Then ask me something, Leora Vane. Anything. Any small thing. Let me give it to you instead of taking. She thought about it. The fire was still cold. The room was dim. She crossed the small distance between them slowly, carefully, as a person crosses ice. She stopped in front of his chair and she held out her hand. Palm up, hold my hand, just that. For a little while he did. He took her small scarred hand in both of his, the way a man cups water he is afraid of spilling, and he bent his forehead to her knuckles, and he did not weep, because Alpha Kings of the Iron Crown did not weep. But something inside him that had been clenched since he was 16, since a feast and a poisoning and a milk-soft mouthful of his uncle's throat, slowly, came unclenched. Her fingers, after a while, closed around his. He stayed with her until the fire across the hall burned down to the last red coal in the grate. She did not let go of his hand. He did not take it back. They did not speak. They did not need to. Aldwyn brought them tea at the 3rd hour past midnight. He set the tray down on the small table. He did not look at them. He went back to his chair by the door. He did not sit. By the 4th hour he had a hand on the hilt of his sword, and was not aware he had put it there. He had spent 43 years reading the air in royal corridors. The air in this corridor was wrong. At the 5th hour past midnight, a maid came up the back stairs from the lower kitchens. She came at a run. Her wool shawl was wrong on her shoulders. Her face was the color of wet ash. She did not look at the king. She did not look at the lady. She looked at Aldwin. He met her in the doorway. "Speak, it is the old woman, sir, from the north. The one who came down with the lady, Mara. Yes, sir, what about her?" The maid did not answer for one breath. "She could not. She is in the washroom, sir, below her throat. Sir, someone has cut her throat. And taken what? The chain, sir. The silver one. The little coin on it. It is gone." Aldwin closed his eyes for one breath. Then he turned back into the room Kailen had stood. He had felt the air change in the room from 20 feet away. His hand was already off Leora's hand, and Leora was already standing, and her hand was already at her own throat, gripping the coin the way a child grips a mother's sleeve. "Aldwin, Majesty, old Mara has been killed. In the lower washroom, her throat is cut. Her silver coin has been taken." Leora's hand stayed at her throat. She did not move. She did not breathe. Kailen looked at her. He understood in one cold and complete breath that the worst men in his court were not in his dungeon. They were sleeping in his palace tonight, eating his bread, wearing his livery. They had walked into a washroom where an old woman of 60 was rinsing out a basin and humming a song from a country across an eastern sea. And they had cut her throat for a silver coin, which meant they knew what the coin was. He looked at Leora. "They are still in this palace." She nodded once. "Then we will find them." That was the line. That was the line that ended that night. A 4-word fact spoken by a 19-year-old girl in a dark grey dress with one hand at her throat and the other still warm from his. And outside the great arched window the moon watched, white, patient, unchanged. The morning after Mara died, they buried her in the lower garden. Kailen did not allow a court funeral. He did not allow priests. He allowed Leora. He allowed Sir Aldwin. He allowed the 2 kitchen maids who had come down to the washroom behind the maid who had come up the stairs. He allowed himself 5 people, a single grave, a clean piece of linen for the body, the silver coin still gone. Leora put her own coin in the grave instead. Aldwin watched her do it. He did not say anything. He understood that some things a king cannot ask of a girl and some things a girl gives anyway. He filled the dirt in himself. He was not as strong with a shovel as he had been at 30. He did not let anyone else take it. When the grave filled, Leora knelt on the dirt and put her hand flat on the earth. "You were not alone on the road, that was all. That was the funeral." Then she stood, and she turned to Kailen and Aldwin. "We are going to find him, not them. Him. Because the moon at the pool had told her something else she had not yet shared with the king. The head of the house was sleeping under this roof tonight. One man. The killing of Mara was one man's hand. The bloodline was many. The order was many. But the hand that had cut a throat at the 5th hour of the morning was one man, and he had been here. Always. She did not know his face yet. But she would know him by the smell of cleaning soap and old fear. That is what the moon had said. 2 months. 2 months Leora sat in council chambers she had not been born to sit in. 2 months she walked the long corridors of the palace at night, with the coin warm against her sternum, listening for something she did not yet have the language for. 2 months Aldwin walked behind her at 3 paces. She learned the palace the way a woman learns a man she has been forced to marry. She learned which guards stood at which doors. She learned which kitchen scullions came up which staircases. She learned which dukes were liars by trade and which were liars by panic. She learned to read a face the way her mother had taught her to read a page. Slowly, carefully, letter by letter, Aldwin worked the names from the king's mother's book. 3 names. 3 men in the current court. 2 were eliminated quickly. The first had been 10 years old when Queen Isolde was killed. The second had been in the south for the entire winter. The queen died, fact verified by 3 independent ledgers. That left 1 name. A name Aldwin told the king before he told Leora. The name was Lord Halcourt, the king's own great-uncle, the last living brother of Queen Isolde. A man with a soft mouth and softer hands, a poet by reputation, an indifferent administrator by record. A long history of being too close to the kitchens on the night Isolde had died. Aldwin had not wanted to bring him in. He was at the feast that night. He was in mourning for a week. He had access to the kitchens through his sister's apartments. He has no motive. He has none, Aldwin. The man is a poet. He has not signed a paper in 11 years. Then why was he where he was? That night, his sister was being crowned. Where else would he be? Aldwin could not answer. Kailen could not answer. So Halcourt was brought in, quietly, to a room that was not a cell and was not a council chamber. They questioned him for 3 days. He wept twice. He apologized for things that had nothing to do with the question. He named 4 other men he was afraid of. He swore on his sister's name 8 times. At the end of the 3rd day, Kailen decided. He decided wrong. He gave the order. He did not stand in the courtyard when it was carried out. He sat in his mother's library with his hands flat on the dark wood of the table and his eyes closed, and he listened for the sound of his own name from the lower courtyard. Because that was the protocol. The condemned man names the king who has condemned him before the blade falls. Halcourt named him in a voice so small Kailen barely heard it through the open window. Then nothing. 3 hours later, a kitchen maid came up to Aldwin with shaking hands. She had found a letter in Halcourt's pocket after the letter had been written that morning, by Halcourt to his younger sister, the one in the southern reaches he had not seen in 15 years. In the letter, he asked her to forgive him for not coming to her wedding. He said he had been afraid the family would not let him go. He said he had wanted to send her flowers but did not know how. He said he loved her. He said he had always loved her. He said he hoped she had married someone who would make her laugh. The letter was not the letter of a man who had poisoned a queen. The letter was the letter of a poet who had been at the wrong kitchen on the wrong night, and whose name had been planted on a list inside a hidden book by someone who had known, 11 years ago, that the day might come when the king would need a suspect to spend his rage on. Aldwin brought the letter to Kailen. Kailen read it once, then twice, then a 3rd time, because some things a king reads and does not yet feel. When he was done, he set the letter on the table. He did not move for a long time. Aldwin, Majesty. His name was on her list because someone wanted it there. Not because she wrote it. That is my suspicion, Majesty. Bring me an inkpot and paper. I am going to write to his younger sister myself. Majesty, it is the least I owe her. He wrote the letter late into the night. Leora sat with him while he wrote it. She did not speak. She did not have to. She put her hand on the table next to his hand, palm up. He did not take it. She understood why. He had not yet given himself permission to be touched. Not tonight. When he was finished writing, he put down the pen. I almost did exactly what they did. I killed the wrong man because I was angry. Yes, you should leave. No. Leora. No. She let the answer hang in the room for one long moment. Then she added the only line that mattered. You wrote the letter. He closed his eyes. She put her hand on top of his. He had not asked. She had not waited because some agreements once made run both ways, and in a stone room 3 flights below them, somewhere in the lower kitchens of the Iron Crown, an old man with a small brass scale and a soft smile sat down to bake bread for the morning. He had been doing it for 41 years. He had no reason, he thought, to be afraid yet. He was wrong about that. The next attempt on her life came 4 days after the letter went south. It came in the wild garden. She had gone there after the council meeting, the way she did most evenings now. Aldwin knew where she was. Aldwin knew she did not want him at 3 paces in the wild garden. He waited at the gate of the upper rose paths and let her have the moss and the moon and the black pool. She heard him a half-second before he came. A boot on wet stone. Wrong. Aldwin's boots were heavier on the heel. The step she heard was lighter, younger, faster. The step of a man trained to come up behind a person without breath. She turned just as the knife came. She turned the wrong way on purpose. Not because she did not know which way the knife was coming. Because she wanted to see his face. He was young, 22. Maybe 23. His left eye sat a little higher than his right. His mouth was thin. He wore black wool, no insignia. He had brought a knife with a curved blade and a handle wrapped in waxed leather, and he held it the way a man holds a knife when he expects the work to be over in 2 strokes. She broke the wrist of the hand that held the knife. She did it without looking down. He did not scream. He had been trained better than the hunters in the pit. He fell to one knee, still holding the broken hand against his chest, and he looked up at her. The way a man looks at a thing he has been told for years was an animal, and is now beginning to understand was something else. Why, he did not answer. Why are you here? Tonight, he spat at her, blood in the spit. He had bitten the inside of his own cheek. He was carrying something. She understood it at once. The cleansing tooth, a small glass ampoule fixed in the lower jaw. For exactly this kind of moment, she moved. She got 2 fingers between his teeth before he could grind down. She wrenched his jaw open with her thumb on his chin. The ampoule rolled out onto the moss. He cursed her. He cursed her in a language that was not the kingdom's tongue. He cursed her in a language she had never been taught but had, somewhere inside her, always known. The moon spat. He had cursed her in the old tongue. She looked down at him. She let him see on her face that she had understood. You serve the order, he went still. You serve the cleansing, he did not answer. But his face answered for him, a small flicker. The tightening at the corner of the eye that even the best trained killers cannot hide when the wrong word is said to them by the wrong mouth. How many of you are in this palace? He laughed. Once. Sharp, more than your king has bread for. How many? You will not live to count. Try me. That was when Aldwin came over the rise of the path, sword in his hand and bad shoulder forgotten, and the young man on the moss decided his work was over. He bit through the lining of his sleeve. A second ampoule. He died in 12 seconds. Foam at his lips, eyes still open, looking, even at the end, at the coin at her throat. She knelt and unbuttoned his coat. She did not flinch. Aldwin understood by now not to ask if she was all right. Inside the coat, under the wool, on the bare skin of his chest. A small tattoo, fresh, maybe a year old, a sun in chains, a bound sun the size of her thumbprint with a length of black ink chain wound around it and fastened with a small lock at the bottom. Beneath it, a single word in the old tongue, cleansing. She covered the body with his coat. Aldwin stood next to her. He looked at the tattoo. He looked at her. The order is older than your house, Aldwin. How old? At least 300 years. They have been in every kingdom. They have been in every court. They believe they are cleaning the bloodline of the wolves. They believe that those of us with the old blood are a stain. Always at feasts, always at weddings, always in mourning halls, and now in washrooms, and now in washrooms. She stood at last. She wiped her hand on the moss. She looked up at the moon. The moon was waiting. There is one of them in your palace, Aldwin. One head of one house. He has been here since before the queen. Since before the king. Maybe since before the king's father. I am going to find him. How he will smell like cleaning soap and old fear. Aldwin closed his eyes for one breath. Then he opened them. Lady Vane. Yes. You are going to be a very dangerous queen. I am not a queen. You are going to be a very dangerous something. That was the closest Sir Aldwin Stone had come to a joke in 11 years. She did not laugh, but she looked at him for a long moment, and she understood in that look that she had picked up another father somewhere on the road, and she had not noticed when Aldwin looked back at the body. Then back at her, Lady Vane, the boy on the road, the one who tried for you at the switchback. He had a mark like this. I did not understand it at the time. I thought it was a brand from a chapter house. I should have understood it. You could not have known. I should have, Aldwin. Nobody alive in this kingdom did. Until tonight, she knelt again. She traced the small sun with the chain around it. The lock at the bottom. The lock was the cruel touch. The lock meant the chain was meant to stay. They believe the sun cannot rise without their permission, and the moon. They believe the moon cannot see them, because they only kill in the light. She let her hand fall. Aldwin. He is going to expect me to come for him. The man at the top. He has been writing letters in your king's name for at least 3 years. He knew, the night we came down the king's road at the switchback, that I had survived. He knows now, since Mara, that I am hunting him. He has been preparing for this conversation. We cannot give him the conversation he has been preparing for. What do you want to do? I want to walk the palace, quietly, until I find him. Without anyone in your livery noticing, even you, even me, especially you, my friend, because the man we are hunting watches you, and you are easier to follow than a torch. She stood. She turned. She walked back through the wild garden alone. Aldwin stood over the body on the moss for one long beat. He had been called many things in 43 years. He had not, until tonight, been called a friend by anyone with the authority to choose the word. He bent and picked up the dead assassin's curved knife. He cleaned it on the man's coat. He put it in his belt. He would not say so to her, but the word had landed. She found him on the 7th night after the body in the garden. She did not find him by guard rotation. She did not find him by interrogation. She did not find him by going through the household ledgers. Aldwin had spread across his table for 2 weeks. She found him by walking. She walked the palace at night. Alone with the coin warm against her sternum and her eyes half closed and the thing inside her unspewed out ahead of her like a hound on a long leash. She did not smell the way wolves smelled. Wolves smelled with their noses. She smelled with the soft place behind her sternum, where for 19 years she had been a wolfless. Mara had smelled like lavender and lye. Mara had also smelled faintly of something else. A specific kind of soap, the kind a man uses when he wants to be sure that what he has touched leaves nothing behind. She had not noticed it the day she met Mara. She had not noticed it the day Mara had died. She noticed it now because she had been smelling for it for 2 weeks, and her nose, like everything else about her, had been learning what it was for. She found the soap on the 7th night, in a corridor on the 3rd floor below the main kitchens. Outside a small wooden door she had never opened. She stood at the door for one long breath. She let the thing inside her settle. She did not need it tonight. Tonight she needed the thing she had been the longest. A girl who could go without screaming for 7 years. She opened the door. It was a spice room, low ceiling, stone shelves on 3 walls, iron hooks above for the hanging things. Jars, sacks, small brass scales, a single oil lamp. The man at the scale was 63 years old, round, soft, white at the temples, wearing the grey apron of the king's larder. He had been with the household since he was a boy. He had carried water for Kailen's grandfather. He had served 3 kings. His name was Master Bramwell Holt. He looked up when she entered. He saw her eyes. He knew. He did not pretend. He did not run. He did not reach for a knife. He set the small brass weight he had been holding back onto the shelf with the exact careful motion of a man who is used to being precise. Then he smiled. A small, sad, almost gentle smile. You can smell it on me, can't you? Blood, cleaning soap. He nodded once, as if she had given the correct answer to an old riddle. That too. She closed the door behind her. She did not move toward him. She did not need to. You killed the queen, yes? 11 years ago, the wine at her coronation feast. I served the bowl that filled her cup. I knew exactly which thread had been opened. You killed my mother. He shook his head slowly. No, child, not myself. That one was my uncle's hand, 7 years ago. He had been training a boy in a southern chapter house for 2 summers for that very night. The boy went up to your father's hall under the colors of the Iron Crown's larder. He served your mother her cup. He was 18 years old. He did not know what we were teaching him to do, not all the way. He worked it out 3 weeks later in the kitchens of a chapter house I had recommended him to. He hanged himself in the lavender corner, 2 co-killings, 11 years apart, different hands. Same house, yes. And you wrote the letters to my father. With a die you cut yourself, I cut it. Yes. From a coin my grandfather brought back from a southern campaign 60 years ago. The die is in the 3rd jar on the shelf above your right shoulder. She did not look. She did not have to. The room was very quiet. He looked at her with the watering eyes of an old man who had been waiting for someone to come and ask him this question for a long time. My family has served the Iron Crown for 9 generations, Lady Vane. Before that we served the moon hunters of the southern shore. We did not stop when the wolves built their throne. We took service in their kitchens instead. We kept the line clean from the inside. We have always been the most useful people in any house where blood needs to be cleaned. Because nobody watches the man who bakes the bread. You murdered a queen. I cleaned a kingdom. She looked at him. She had thought for 2 months that she would kill him. She had thought it on the road. She had thought it in the council chamber. She had thought it in every corridor she had walked at night now. Standing in this small spice room with saffron threads on a shelf behind his head and a 63-year-old baker in front of her, she found that she did not want to. She wanted him to be seen. Which was not the same thing. You will come with me, Master Holt. To the throne hall, you will kneel before the king. You will tell him in front of the full court what you did to his mother and what your uncle did to mine. And you will tell him in front of every duke and steward and chamberlain who has ever broken bread you baked. And then he will decide what becomes of you. Not me, him. He did not move. She had expected that. She had not expected what he did next. He smiled, the same sad, gentle smile, as if he were a teacher and she had just answered the wrong second question after answering the first correctly. You will not take me anywhere, child. You think you can. You will not take me anywhere. Because the moment you leave this room, my brother in the king's guard will put a poisoned knife through the king's ribs, and you will run upstairs and try to save him. And by the time you remember you left a man like me alive in a spice room, I will be 3 streets gone, and you will have a corpse to bury and no killer to try. He folded his hands neatly on the apron at his waist. You see, there is more than one of us in this house. There has always been more than one of us. That is what cleansing means. There is never only one. She did not move for one breath. He thought, for that one breath, that he had won. She watched it happen in his eyes. The smallest fattening of pride at the corner of his mouth. Then she moved not toward the door. He had expected toward the door. He had built his entire bluff on toward the door. She moved toward him. She crossed the spice room in 2 strides. She took the soft fold of skin at his throat, and she pressed her thumb under his jaw, and she pinned him against the stone shelf, and she held him there with one hand. I am going to leave this room, and Aldwin is going to come in. Through that door. Behind me. He has been waiting in the corridor for 1 minute and 17 seconds. He's going to take you quietly. By the back stairs, where none of your brothers in livery will see you. He will lock you in a room I have already chosen. With windows of 3 iron bars and a guard who is not from this kingdom. He came down with me from the north. He knows what you look like. He has known for 2 weeks, and he is going to sit outside your door. And the king is upstairs. Surrounded by guards he changed 2 days ago. Because we knew there was a second. We have been waiting for you to tell us which one. Thank you for being so helpful. His face changed. She had picked the right pressure point on the jaw. He could not speak now even if he had wanted to. He stared at her with the watering eyes of a man who had just understood that the room he was in was a smaller room than he thought. Master Holt, you should have killed Mara faster. You took 2 minutes. She told us where you sleep. She let go. She stepped back. The door behind her opened. Aldwin came in. He did not look at Holt. He looked at her. She nodded. He took Bramwell Holt out the back way, the way she had said, without a sound. She stood alone in the spice room for 1 breath, with the saffron, and the small brass weight, and the smell of cleaning soap that would not, she suspected, ever go out of her clothes again. Then she went upstairs to her king. Holt had lied about that too. He had said the second assassin was in the king's guard. That was the lie. The second assassin was a kitchen boy, 16 years old. Soft round face and a slight stammer. He had been bringing water to the upstairs corridors 3 times a day for 10 months. Nobody questioned him. Nobody looked at him. He was Bramwell Holt's nephew. Aldwin had figured it out 4 days before Leora found Holt. He had not told her. He had not wanted her to walk into the spice room with 2 fights in her head. He had wanted her to walk in with one. When Leora started up the back stairs to the king's chamber, Aldwin's man on the 2nd floor landing was already moving, toward the kitchen boy's water route. Aldwin's man got there first. By 11 seconds, the boy was carrying a copper pitcher up the staircase to the king's outer chamber. Under the lip of the pitcher he had taped a thin, blackened stiletto, the kind a man can hold against the inside of his wrist while he pours water with the same hand. Aldwin's man came up behind him at the landing. The boy heard him a half-second before. He turned. He had been trained. Not as well as the man in the garden. He swung the pitcher, water everywhere. The stiletto fell. He scrambled for it. Aldwin's man stepped on the boy's wrist before he reached the blade. That was the moment Leora came up the stairs. She saw the boy on the floor. She saw the pitcher. She saw the wet stone. She saw the stiletto. And she saw in the soft round face of the kitchen boy looking up at her, the same eyes as the 63-year-old baker in the spice room 2 flights below. The boy started to cry. He was 16. She did not move for a long beat. Then she crossed to him. She knelt down on the wet stone. She did not flinch from the boy's wrist where Aldwin's man had broken it. How long has your uncle had you here? 10 months. Did he bring you in himself? Yes. And before that, my mother, she raised me. In a chapter house, you learned to read in a chapter house. Yes, and someone taught you what we are. The boy did not answer. Someone taught you what to do to us. He was crying now, quietly. The crying of a boy who has never been a man and is now being told he never will be. She put her hand on his head once. Briefly. Then she stood Aldwin. Take him too, by the same stairs, same kind of room. He does not need a guard from the north. He needs a guard who has children, Lady Vane. He needs a guard who has children. Aldwin nodded. He took the boy down the stairs. Leora stood on the wet landing for 1 long moment, listening to the water drip off the copper pitcher onto the stone. A boy of 16 had carried that toward the king for 10 months. She had been a girl's age, once. She had been 12 when they had locked her in the cellars. The line between this boy and her was that thin. She wiped her hand on her gown. She went up to find the king. Kailen was in the council chamber, alone. He had heard the disturbance on the landing. He had been sitting at the long council table with his hands flat on the wood. When she came in, he stood. Leora, it is done. Both of them. both of them, plus a boy of 16 who I would like you to put in a chapter house, not a cell, in the south, where the moon hunters were once a chapter, where they will know him, and teach him a different name for what we are. All right, he came around the table. He did not touch her. Did he tell you who killed my mother? He did himself. The wine at her coronation feast, 11 years ago. He served the bowl her cup was poured from, and yours, his uncle, 7 years ago. The wine boy I told you about, the same house, the same hand at the top of it. Kailen closed his eyes for one long breath. I am sorry. For what? For the 11 years. 11 years is not yours to apologize for. The 11 years are mine. He opened his eyes. Then for tonight, tonight you can apologize for. He laughed. The first real laugh she had heard out of him since the morning she had read out of the geography book. He held out his hand, palm up. Asking, she took it. The trial happened 9 days later. Kailen did not rush it. Aldwin had not let him. The kingdom needed to see the trial happen. The kingdom needed to see in proper daylight exactly what had been hidden in the bread for 9 generations. The court came, the dukes, the stewards, the chamberlains, the ambassadors, even the priests who had not been welcome in this throne hall since Kailen had taken the crown at 16. Bramwell Holt was brought in. He did not look around the room. He had been in this room every day for 41 years. He knelt on the same marble where Lord Leora Vane had once knelt. He was older than Rhys. He was steadier on his knees. He had been kneeling on this marble his whole life. He confessed. He did not need to be made to. He told the court, in the small, even voice of a man who had been waiting his whole life to be asked what had been done and why. He named the queen. He named the wine he had served. He named his uncle. He named Leora's mother. He named the wine boy and the chapter house where the boy had hanged himself. He named 11 other women whose deaths had been recorded in the kingdom as misadventures and accidents and quiet illnesses. He named the washroom 3 months ago. He did not name Leora. He had been going to. He had not yet had the chance. The wolves were not meant to share the world, Majesty. The wolves were meant to inherit it. The old blood is a contamination. My family has cleaned what we could. We have done it in plain sight, because we were not ashamed of it. We were proud. The throne hall was silent. Kailen did not stand. He looked down at Holt for a long moment, then he gave the sentence. Master Holt, you will not be executed. Execution would be a kindness. You will be put on a ship at the southern port and sent across the eastern sea to the old country, where the moonborn keep the long memory. You will tell them, when you arrive, what your family has done. You will live the rest of your days in their judgment. Not mine. I think they will be a fairer court than I would be tonight. Holt bent his forehead to the marble. Thank you, Majesty. Do not thank me. She spared you. Remember it. That same evening, Leora went down to the dungeons. Her father stood up when she came in. You will not be executed, Leora. You will not be exiled either. You will be taken tomorrow to the chapter house of the south, the one with the tall white walls. You will live there until you die. You will not leave the walls. You will not ride. You will not hunt. You will not see another pack member ever again. Yes, you will be taught to read. He looked up at her. He did not understand. To read? Yes, I can read. Leora, you can read pack ledgers. You cannot read books. You cannot read what my mother read. You cannot read what I have been reading for 2 months. You are going to learn. And every week you are going to write me a letter, Leora. I will not answer. I know, but I will read them. He closed his eyes. They came again. They were the tears of a man who has been given the longest, smallest punishment of his life, and who has, in the end, understood what kind of daughter he raised. I will write. Every week she turned to go. At the door she stopped. Father, yes, you do not get to be forgiven, but you get to try. That is more than you would have given me. She left 3 days after the trial. Kailen called the court back into the throne hall. He had not told Leora why. He had told Aldwin. Aldwin had spent 2 evenings helping a king plan a small ceremony of his own. When Leora walked into the throne hall, she was wearing the dark grey gown again. The traveler's coin where everyone could see it now. Kailen rose from the throne. He came down off the dais. He did not touch her. He had not touched her without her hand turning palm up for 2 months. Lady Vane, by the will of the Iron Crown and the witness of this hall, I name you Royal Counselor of the Iron Crown, the first of your kind to hold a seat at this table in 300 years. You will sit on my right. You will speak when you choose. You will speak when you do not choose. And the kingdom will listen. There were murmurs through the court. Kailen waited until they stopped. Then he turned to Sir Aldwyn Stone. Aldwyn understood at once. He had not been told this part. Kailen had not warned him. Aldwyn looked at his king for one long breath. He understood in the same breath that there are some things a man does not refuse, even when he has not been asked. He stepped forward. Sir Aldwyn Stone, 60 years old, knelt on the marble of the throne hall, in front of a 19-year-old girl in a grey dress. Leora's hand flew to her mouth. Aldwyn, Lady Vane. His voice was steady. He had spent the previous evening practicing it not to shake. I am the first sword of this crown. I have served 3 kings. I have buried more friends than I have hands. And I have decided in my old age that I am also yours. Whatever the king asks me to be for him, I am also that for you. Will you have me? She could not speak for one breath. Then she said, I will. He stood, with his hands on his knees, with his back not all the way straight. To her, he bowed once. To the king. Then he walked back to the wall. 1 year later, in the wild garden by the Black Pool, Leora planted a moon tree. It was a sapling brought by envoys who had crossed the Eastern Sea to deliver it. Silver-barked, slow-growing, with leaves that turned faintly luminous on full moon nights. The eldest of those envoys, a woman with antler-pale hair, had held Leora's face in both hands and spoken a sentence Leora had not been taught but somehow understood. Welcome home, daughter. Even when home is far, Leora planted the tree at dusk. Kailen held the clay pot for her while she dug. He had asked first whether she would like him to hold it. She had said yes. He no longer assumed. When the sapling was settled in the dark earth and the first water poured around its roots, Leora sat back on her heels and pressed her dirty hand to her sternum, the coin warm there. Always warm now. Kailen sat beside her on the moss, not touching. Near my mother would have liked her the tree. You, she smiled. It was still a small smile. She was still learning the larger ones. But it was hers. Above them the moon was rising. Round, white, patient. It laid a long silver path across the black pool. The sapling's leaves caught the light and held it, faintly, like small held breaths. After a while Leora let her hand fall, palm up, on the moss between them. Kailen looked at it. He did not move until she nodded. Then he laid his hand over hers. The moon tree's leaves shivered. Very faintly. The story does not end at the moon tree. It only pauses there. Because the work of being seen is not done in a single night, even by people who have learned at last how to ask before they take. So years pass. The girl in the grey dress becomes a woman in a darker gown. Then an older woman. Then an old woman with the same amber eyes and the same scarred hands and a few thin lines at the corners of her mouth. From finally at last learning to smile, the moon tree grows. 40 feet by the time her hair turns grey. 60 by the time her hair turns white. Children come from across the Eastern Sea to study under it. One of those children is her granddaughter, 9 years old. Same amber eyes. The girl asks her grandmother, one autumn evening, why the older women in the village still call certain children Wolfless. The grandmother thinks about it for a long time. Then she says, listen, there is a name they will give you. Sometimes a name your father will give you. Sometimes a name a teacher will give you. Sometimes a name the children at the well will give you, because their mothers gave it to them at breakfast. A name like Wolfless. A name like stupid. A name like lazy. A name like too much. You will believe it. Because it comes from somewhere big, you will believe it for years. Maybe 7, maybe more, but child. The name is not the truth about you. The name is the truth about the mouth that said it. You will know this one day. The way I knew it. On a night that you cannot yet imagine. In a room that you cannot yet see. With a hand in your hand that has at last learned to ask first. And on that night the name will fall off. Like a coat you have outgrown, the grandmother stops. She is not used to long speeches. Then the girl asks the important question. Because children always ask the important question last, she asks about her great-grandfather. The man in the white-walled chapter house far to the south, whose name in this family is not said often, and not loudly when it is said. The grandmother does not answer for one breath. Then she takes the girl's hand, palm up, the way she has always taken hands. You do not have to forgive everyone, child. Some people have hurt you in ways that do not heal, but if there is one person in your life who is still alive, who is still trying, who is still writing you letters you do not answer, write the letters anyway, because the cruelest thing they can do to you is make you a person who does not read the letters. Do not give them that. The grandmother lifts her face to the moon. So you, on the other side of the screen, wherever you are tonight, I do not know what name has been put on you. I do not know what father did not look at you. Or what mother, or what teacher, or what whole street of children at a well long ago. I do not know what letter is in a drawer in your house, unwritten or unread, but know this, the moon sees you, even now, even tonight, even when no one in the room with you can, and if there is a hand somewhere in your life that is waiting for you to turn it palm up. Tonight is a good night for that, so tell me, in the place where you are right now, whose name did you wear for too long? And to whom do you owe a letter you have not written? Leave it in the comments below. We will sit with what you write. Your words matter to us. Because somebody in the comments tonight needs to hear from somebody else in the comments tonight that they are not alone on the road. The moon sees you, even now.